Welcome back. So we had just finished getting to this point here where we have our, our text with some texture. We've got the light with the halo, the spotlight with the halo, and creating this kind of neat ray effect. The next thing we're going to do is get it so that the text doesn't all appear visible until that light passes in behind it. And in order to do that, we need to start playing with the textures. We're going to do one thing though before that. So I'm just going to press escape here, go back, set it to your top view. So that's 7. And we're actually going to add a empty. And so what I'm going to do is just, I don't know if it really matters. I guess it doesn't. I'll just put my cursor sort of somewhere close by. I'm just going to add an empty. So I can go under add, and there should be something here that says empty. And we're just going to add a plain axis. So it's just like that. What we're going to do is we're going to actually constrain the light to the movement of our of this empty here. So what I'm going to do is come under or find our spotlight. So it's right here. Okay, so I've clicked on the spotlight, and then I'm going to go to my my modifiers or my constraints here. So I'm going to add an object constraint. And the constraint that I'm going to add is a location one. So this copy location. And it's going to copy the location of that empty that I just created. Okay. And then doesn't matter on the Z axis. Okay. So we're just going to leave it on the X, Y, and get rid of the Z there. So basically wherever I grab my empty, there's my empty there, the light moves along with it. Okay. And you can kind of see it as I move there. Okay. Good. So with that done, let's go and click on one of these. I'm going to click on the Fleming one. Okay. And I'm going to come back up, move this over a little bit, give us a bit more room. And so we're going to click on the material. So we've already added this red material here. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to set the transparency to 0. So down here, you'll notice there's transparency, and they've got the Z transparency, and then there's an alpha. Alpha of 1 means it's completely opaque, and then anything less, makes it more and more transparent. And I'm actually going to set it to 0 there. The texture will deal with what we need here. Okay, so then I'm going to go over, once I've finished that, click on the texture, which is sitting right beside it, and there it is, and we're going to add a new texture. Okay, and so that's the texture there. Now this is where you could add a material to it. Here I'm just going to click on this, and we're going to change it to a blend. It's going to blend from one to another. And there's a few things that we need to make sure that we change here. So the influence, let me just find that here. There it is, influence. We're going to go from color to the alpha. Okay, so we're going to set that alpha to there. We also need to play with the ramp here. So I think under, let me just see here, progression. Oh, that's okay there. I just need to find, projection. There we are. Projection, no, sorry. I'm looking for ramp here. So the blend, progression. Okay, just 1 second. Colors. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Under colors, and so where things get hidden, we're going to set this to ramp. And then you can sort of see that here is the level of transparency. We actually want to flip it. So because we want it to be, this at the moment showing completely transparent here and opaque on that side, we actually want the other. We want transparent on the other side. So we're going to flip it so that we've got something like that. And then just sort of set it to ease. And that will just make it a little bit more of a blend. And you can see the difference there. And I'm actually going to pull this back a little bit more so that it's a bit more distinct. And then that will prevent us from seeing too many of the other letters beside it. Okay, so we might have to play with this after just to see, but I think that will be fine. So the influence we set to the alpha. I'm just making sure I've done everything right here. Oh yes, and then we need to map the object. UV coordinates is when you're sort of wrapping and unwrapping a texture. We don't want to do that. We want to set it to an object, and that's going to be our empty. So I'm going to put it on here, click on that, and set it to our empty. Okay, so that will help move the transparency with that light. So this texture is kind of moving with the movement of our empty, which is really controls our light. And then I decrease the ramp there. So let's take a look at what this looks like. Okay, so I'm going to press F12, make sure my mouse is over here. And it's looking pretty good. So now the light's a little low. Okay, so I'm just going to do is pull that up a bit. Whoops. Control Z just to undo that. Make sure I'm on my empty controller. So I'm just going to pull that up a little bit. So press F12 again. Okay, so I'm getting a little bit in through there. I'm not 100% sure why that's happening. I'm going to move it back. My light might just be a little bit too bright. I don't think it's too obvious. I mean, that's not too bad there. It might be. I'm just going to go play with that ramp again. So again, I'm clicking on the Fleming, going to pull this in a bit, and then just don't want to change that. I want to go back to my control or my empty, pull that over. Now the color is not coming through. I think it might be my light, and I'm going to play around with that a little bit later on, but I think that's not too bad. The reason why I'm thinking it's more my light is just because I'm getting sort of losing the color here, and so I think it's just sort of the light shining through so bright. So we'll see what we can do to play around a little bit maybe later. Let's one thing I could maybe do right now. See, that's the controller. Move it in a little closer. I bet you that will do it. I'm going to take an F12. Yeah. And so now I'm getting a little bit less there. So Fleming is going to be revealed without releasing that M. Good. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing with that, the Mr., okay, because at the moment that's not doing anything. So what I'm just going to do is basically do the same thing. So I'm going to go back here, set the transparency to full, or turn off alpha basically, leave all the rest the same, go to texture, move up here. Now you should be able to find that texture. So I'm going to click on this one, which is the same thing, and it should almost have all the same settings. There's something that doesn't quite go across. I just want to make sure. Oh, the mapping doesn't come across, so make sure you map that as well. So, sorry, it was to the object, and our object is our empty. And just make sure, so ramp, this side's visible, this is the invisible, that should be okay. Influence is on color, that's wrong, so we need to change this up. So it was alpha, turn off the color. So alpha is what we're trying to influence there. Okay, so I believe that's all of them. The ramp was still ease, wasn't it? Yeah, this stayed the same, but, or this changed with it. These ones didn't here. Okay, so let's just do a little bit. Again, I'm going to grab my empty, just grab it, bring it in, and make sure I've got the same effect. So basically from here, I should see the Fleming shore showing up. That's kind of strange. Just come in here. Now the MR, I'm just going to, oops. Got to figure out why that F is not disappearing. So there is the MR and the F. So the F seems to have been remaining there. Didn't have that problem before, of course. Let me just see if I pull this one over. Well, that's the black. Give me a minute here and I'll just see what I can do. All right, I think I found the problem for some reason on mine. And if you're having this trouble, I had lost the empty here. So it was just, I was just affecting this and it wasn't working right. So I pulled that back. I pulled the ramp back to something more reasonable. I couldn't figure out why I was having to go way over here to get that effect. And all it was doing was removing these. It was not linked to the empty. I'm sure I did that. So if you're having that problem, just make sure it's the mapping is set to coordinates of the object, and that specific object is the empty there. So just to prove to you that things are working okay. So there's showing up. The N is still a little visible. I think that's going to be okay. If I click on my empty, and so I move it back, at this moment, basically only the Mr. part should show up, and a little bit of the F is starting to show. That's good. And then if I go all the way over, basically nothing's there. So again, the whole idea is that as you move it left to right, it's a bit of a reveal. So the MR getting shown up, and then right when you get to the end, the whole logo should be there. So you just kind of revealed it with the rays. Okay, we're going to end this video here. And again, later on, you can play around with it and see what you can do to make it look better or more into your style. But we'll end this here. The next video we'll look at compositing, sorry, I should say that better, compositing, which will get into nodes, which is something that I'm not particularly familiar with. I'm just sort of learning right now, but it will give you a little bit more control over your rendering process. All right, we'll see you in the next video.